figure out what you're thinking. And if the thoughts aren't where they should be, then change those thoughts.
Agent Power Huddle is a daily jumpstart, giving you all the tools you need to create an amazing real estate career. Led by top experts in the field, you'll learn how to sell more houses in less time while creating the life you want. Welcome to the Agent Power Huddle.
Welcome to another Agent Power Huddle. This is a Monday, so we're doing our Mindset Monday today, and I am joined by an awesome co-host named Craig Graves. Craig, how you feeling today?
Feeling good. How about you?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm excited to talk to you. It's been a while. Craig has hosted a number of these on his own, and a number with Matthew Hanks, and he's usually talking about a program that every time I hear you talk about it, I get really excited. I do, because given everything that's gone on with the real estate industry and mortgage rates going up and things changing, I feel like the mindset piece becomes so much more important as agents to do what we need to do. And even the name of the program you went through, right? Unbreakable Mind.
Unbeatable Mind.
I can't even say it right. Unbeatable Mind. Sorry. Unbeatable Mind. I think I typed it right every time. Unbeatable Mind.
Yeah, you did. It's kind of funny. There's a coach there at Unbeatable. His name's Richard Thompson. He's not an EXP, but he happens to be an agent in Las Vegas. And we'd go through these role plays, and he would be the client or whatever, and he'd say, "Tell me about this unbelievable brain," or whatever it is. So it's kind of a funny thing to hear you say that.
I'm telling an inside joke without knowing it. All right. So in case people haven't heard you talk about this before, because what we're going to do today, we're going to unpack some tools and strategies that Craig uses. But I also just want you guys to hear a little bit about his journey, because it's been an interesting journey. Let's just start with what is Unbeatable Mind, and we'll talk about how you got into it and go from there.
Yeah, Unbeatable Mind is a program that was developed by a retired Navy SEAL commander. His name is Mark Devine. You guys may or may not have heard of Mark. And you said I've done a number of these talks on the Agent Power Huddle. Matthew and I started out with a review of Mark's book called The Way of the SEAL. He's got several books, but the one that I started with was called The Way of the SEAL. And he goes through these 8 principles of elite leadership. And so, it's really a mindset-based program. Obviously you can go through it individually or work with some of the unbeatable coaches, but that's kind of what it is at a high level, Jesse.
And have you noticed, you've been on this personal growth, this journey for a while. Have you noticed changes in yourself since you started this?
Yeah, I have. I definitely have, and it's kind of funny because people have noticed changes in me over the years. I had my kids at one point said, "Hey, Dad, you seem a lot calmer. What you got going on?" And I hosted a podcast for a couple of years with a psychotherapist friend of mine. And we were doing a sound check. I've actually got this recording. And he said, "Hey, you seem a little calmer lately. What are you doing?" And so I went through telling him what I'd been doing. I'd kind of up my personal practice. And so people have noticed changes in me as well. And I feel there's more confidence, Jesse. And one of the things we talk about in our program is the 20X factor. You're capable of 20 times more than you think you are. David Goggins calls it the 40% rule. But, I feel like that's true. Matthew and I came on one of the Power Huddles not too long ago and talked about the 20X event that we had done out in Temecula, California, which is a 12 to 14 hour event that's hosted by Mark's team. And they're all either current or former Navy SEALs and special operators. And so you are really capable of doing a lot more than you think you are.
I love it. And those of you listening, hopefully this is already starting to make sense why as real estate agents, this would matter to you, right? Staying calmer, being able to do more than you thought, especially as the market shifts and changes, knowing that you have that sense of confidence in yourself. So did you start out like this, Craig? Like, did you start out being like, I'm calm, I'm good? Or what was things like? And how did you find this program?
I wouldn't say I was always calm, and I'm not always now. We tell a funny story about personal development, personal growth. The guy's walking down the street, he falls in a hole. He comes back the next day, he sees the hole, he still falls in it. The third day, he sees the hole and goes around it. And the fourth day, he just avoids the hole. He just goes a different way. So, even if you're doing some of this kind of work, you still fall in the hole. It's not always, you're never really get there. We talk about self-mastery, but it's never really achieved. The way I got into it, I don't know at what point in my life I kind of got interested in personal development, but I started reading some personal development books and those kind of things, and started that journey. My father had been in the Navy. And so when I was a kid, I wanted to be like my dad and I wanted to join the Navy. At some point, I found out about Navy SEALs, and I never really wanted to be a Navy SEAL, right? But I was always curious as to what makes the 15% of the guys who make it through the program. And Matthew draws an interesting parallel. He says only about 15% of real estate agents stay in the business, but only about 15% of these guys make it through the training. And I'm like, why is that? And at first you think, well, they're just stronger. They're just, more athletic or whatnot. But it's really the mind that gets them through. And so I had read a bunch of SEAL books and stuff like that. And most of them were about SEAL training. It's the hardest training in the world and blowing up stuff and shooting bad guys and stuff like that. And I was on my way to a Christmas party and realized I had forgotten to get my nephew or my cousin a gift. And so he's 21. So I stop in a bookstore and there's this book, The Way of the SEAL there. I'm thinking, oh, great. He'll love this. It's about, Navy SEAL stuff. And being, interested in that kind of thing myself, I grabbed the book too. And when I started reading it, I realized that it wasn't a typical book. It was more about Mark teaching these mindset techniques. And I thought, wow, I never wanted to be a SEAL. I'm not trying to be a SEAL, but I thought if I could learn these mindset techniques that he's teaching, what could I do with that? And so I read The Way of the SEAL. I read another book he had written. He's got an online academy that I went through. It was a two-year thing, And so that's kind of how I found it and started with it.
I'm glad for that birthday party. The lack of present.
Yeah, right.
So question for you, kind of at a high level, assuming no one's ever been exposed to any of this stuff, but they're like, I like this idea. I mean, do you believe, first of all, are people who gravitate to, let's say, becoming a Navy SEAL, do they have just a predisposition? They're just naturally have that, or is it a learnable skill that you can develop that mental toughness?
Well, I think that some people are born with the natural, obviously they are, because people are going through that. And it's funny because, I'll talk to people who have no idea what Unbeatable Mind is or who Mark Divine is. And they'll tell me about how they deal with mindset issues. And it's similar to the things that we're teaching. But that was the thing for me, Jesse. I thought that you were either born with this mental toughness, this mindset, or not, and maybe that was a fixed mindset of my own. But it's definitely a teachable skill. And in fact, I said that 85% of people who go through SEAL training quit. 90% of the people who train through Mark's programs first make it through SEAL training. Wow. So, and you could say those people were going to make it anyway. I don't know. But, the numbers are pretty high for the people who are successful once they train with Mark and his team.
Wow. So where does the train? I know, by the way, Gian dropped into the chat box. If you're here live on the Zoom, there's a link to Matthew and Craig's Way of the SEAL episodes. If you want to click on that and check that out later, or we'll put it in the show notes for this one to link back to that one if you listen to the podcast. But you don't have to train through all of it now. But if someone were to start, if you're like, okay, they just want to dive into this, besides picking up the book and kind of learning there, is there any sort of tactical thing where you're like, this is the first thing I tell people usually to do? Where do people start?
Jesse, a lot of what goes on in our minds, we have control over. And I didn't really think that was the case. I thought that our minds just went, but we do have control over those thoughts, right? And we can change them. We can change the thoughts if they go down a negative path. There's a lot of different tools in the program. A breathing practice is one of those. And, I've heard Commander Divine say more than once, if you take anything away from the program, take the breathing practice away. And so what we do is we sit in a meditative state and it's just a mindfulness practice, really just watching our thoughts. So at a base level, I would say, figure out what you're thinking. And if the thoughts aren't where they should be, then change those thoughts. And through that breathing practice, we teach what we call like a witness. So, a witness is kind of higher than your thoughts. So if you were sitting in a movie theater and you were watching the screen, the things that play out on the screen are the thoughts. And you're sitting back as the witness looking. So if you can get to a point where you think before you react and you know what your thought process, you know what thoughts are going through your mind, then you can, first of all, choose your reaction if something comes your way that's not good. And then you can also redirect those thoughts to a positive place. So at a base level, if you didn't do anything else, I would say the breathing practice is the baseline for everything.
I love how many similarities there are between different disciplines. The same things come up over and over, right? It's really interesting. And before we change gears, so on the terms of the breathing practice, how often do you do this? Is it multiple times a day? Is it like you do it a couple of times? Like how does that look for you guys?
Yeah, I normally try to do at least once a day. That's really my goal. And through the Unbeatable Mind, he teaches a box breathing practice. So you inhale to a 4 or 5 count, you hold to a 4 or 5 count, you exhale to a 4 or 5 count, and you hold at the bottom, and then you repeat for a period of time. I like to play around with it though. I saw your video on the Wim Hof method. There's a YouTube channel called Take a Deep Breath. I don't know if you've seen that one, but if you haven't, look that one up. And he's got some Wim Hofish practices. So what I'm doing now today, I'll do 20 minutes or so of breathing, of kind of power Wim Hofish breathing. And then I'll spend about 15 minutes in just a box breathing state, where I'm watching my thoughts. I'm doing some visualization, concentration practice. So that's kind of what I'm doing today. But I recommend to people I work with to do a 20-minute practice, 20 minutes of box breathing. A lot of people can't do that. It's a long time to sit. If you've never done it, to sit. So I recommend starting out small, even if it's a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and then kind of working your way up from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just listening to some study that was doing it based on a 5-minute box breathing daily. And that was enough to even show physiological reduction in stress symptoms and some pretty beneficial things in just 5 minutes a day from a consistent, like daily consistency.
Yeah, cool. It's really amazing, and some people think, well, I know how to breathe. I've been doing it my whole life. But most people breathe, they're not breathing right. They're breathing through the mouth. They're breathing into their upper chest. So like a proper breath is through the nose, down into the belly, using the diaphragm. And then you kind of work you fill your air up, your lungs up and your chest up with air from there. And then you exhale through the nose in the reverse order. And that's really a proper. And you're right. There's all kind of science behind it. If we breathe in that fashion, then it changes our physiology. And in fact, the SEAL teams teach a tactical breath, which is a 4 or 5 in and a 4 or 5 out. So those guys can calm themselves in combat situations. So if it works in combat, it's going to work in real estate or with your children or your spouse or whatever,
I love it. And we can geek out on breathing for a while, but I have more things I want to ask you. But I love this stuff because it sounds so simple. And I guarantee if you're on here, not many of you guys are on camera this morning, but if you type in the chat box or let me know, it's just as soon as you started talking about breath, I found myself consciously thinking about how I was breathing, holding it. Anyone else find that, right? Like immediately, as soon as someone starts talking about it, it's something we have such direct control over. It's pretty cool. All right. So I want to change gears a little bit because I think I mentioned this when we were texting back and forth about you coming on here again. When your alarm goes off, are you someone that has just naturally, you pop out of bed, you're excited every day? Or, is there certain things you do? Like what is that? Is there a process? And walk me through that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that I jump out of bed, every morning. I was having a conversation last night with a guy about being an early bird or a late night guy. I do get up and I'm trying to be intentional about the things I let into my mind first thing. So when I do wake up in the mornings, I do some Bible reading and stuff like that. Then I do some breath practice and I do a gratitude practice. So I write things I'm grateful for in my journal, and I try to fill my head with positive things. I might turn on something on, a motivational video on YouTube or something like that, just to fill my mind with positive things. If we let that negative news and stuff like that in there, it just, for me personally, my day just kind of doesn't recover if I don't set it intentionally with positive things.
I love it. And I knew you were very, strategic in what you do when it goes off. So do you have days where the alarm goes off and you go, I don't want to get out of bed?
Oh, absolutely. I think, yeah, absolutely have those days.
and what do you do on those days? Like, do you do anything different or is it the same things? Like how do those days go for you?
Well, it's just a matter of discipline and getting up, if you've ever heard Jocko Willink, I love Jocko's direct approach. He says, he gets up every morning at 4:30 and takes a picture of his watch and puts it on Instagram. And people say, hey, Jocko, what's the secret of getting up early? And he says, the secret is set your clock. And when it goes off, get up, So you just have to have some discipline on those days to get up and get going.
Yeah. And I think that discipline, the more you do it, the more it's self-reinforcing as well, right? That that becomes part of your identity, as you are a disciplined person who does this thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you noticed your identity has shifted over the last, few years that you've been going through this journey?
Yeah, I do. I would say that's true. I definitely feel more confidence in myself. I think the way I carry myself is different than it used to be. And this has been a pretty long journey for me. I think I read The Way of the Seal in 2014. So, I've been at it since then. Divine opened up a coaching program a few years back, and I did go through that certification and became one of his coaches because it had made such an impact on me. But yeah, I definitely have more confidence in myself. I think I carry myself different than I used to. I look at physical training differently now because that's also a part of training the mind, and we can talk about that more if you'd like to do that. So
let's talk about that. I want to talk about the connection between the physical and the mental. What is the connection there, and how does that work for you?
Well, the way it works for me, we teach a process, or we teach the big four mental toughness. We talked about breathing. The second one is your self-talk. What are you telling yourself? The third thing is visualization, how you see yourself. And then the fourth thing is micro goals. And so I use these big four skills for everything. And in mental toughness, when you hear that term, you think, yeah, Navy SEALs or athletes or doing hard things. And I used the big four mental toughness in my real estate training and painting my daughter's bedroom and cooking dinner, following a recipe. So those skills to me are golden. So when we put ourselves in hard physical situations, what kind of thoughts go through your mind if you're doing a really intense workout? Oh, this sucks. I can't do it. Whatever. You start having all these negative thoughts, and that's a great way to practice. You control your breath. You start telling yourself positive things instead of the negative things. You witness those negative thoughts coming in and you change them. You see yourself being successful. Maybe at the end of the workout, you're hanging out with your buddies or whatever. You visualize yourself in a state where you have good posture, and you're really doing well. You're really killing it. And then you just focus on the one thing at hand. If it's, I like to use the example of burpees because everybody hates burpees, right? If you're going to do 100 burpees, where does your mind go? Immediately, it goes, oh my God, I can't do 100 burpees. But if you think about when those thoughts come in, you go, oh, I got this. I can do this. Then you visualize yourself doing the burpees. You're using good form. You're doing a big jump at the end and slapping your hands together. And then you just focus on one burpee, man. All I got to do is one burpee 100 times. And it might get to a point where I'm just putting my hands on the deck, I'm just kicking my feet back. And that's my only goal at that moment. It's just that little thing that's right in front of me. So that physical training is a great way to practice those skills.
I've never heard you say that. I love that. All you're doing is one burpee and one whatever 100 times, right? That's breaking it down to the I love that.
Yeah.
So question, as you're you're doing physical training and you're putting your mind through these situations, everyone starts with a different baseline of physicality, right? Everyone starts with a different baseline. Is it just about kind of pushing yourself into those situations? And then how do you train the self-talk piece? How does that tie into it as people put themselves into these different physical situations?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, yes, absolutely. So what's hard for me may not be hard for you or vice versa. I may say, hey, let's do 100 burpees. And you say, oh yeah, no problem. I got that. I don't do that, but you may. So, if you're looking
or you say 10 and someone's like, I don't, right. Whatever
right,
it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's different for different strokes for different folks. So, like another example that I use is ice baths and stuff like that. And it sounds like you have some experience with that, but, some people can do cold and some can't. So, the baseline is going to be different strokes for different folks. So just start where you are, figure out what's hard for you, and then work with that. And the second part of that question was what? Repeat that for me.
Self-talk. How do you, I know you got to start by becoming aware of it, but how do you train? If self-talk is part of the big four, how do you train self-talk? Because I think especially in sales, tying this back in the real estate a little bit, self-talk is something that a lot of agents aren't even aware of how much is impacting them in their day and what they're doing and where they're at. How do you train self-talk?
Yeah. So we're telling ourselves something all the time, right? We have somewhere between 50 and 90,000 thoughts a day, depending on which expert you're listening to. And most of those thoughts are just loops. So it's being aware of the thoughts, first of all, And then just, one of the things we teach is like spot drills. So you might set your phone for every hour and it goes off every hour. And you ask yourself at that moment, what am I thinking at this moment? And if it's something you shouldn't be thinking or something you want to change, then you work through that process of changing it. Another thing you can do is put a little wristband on or whatever, just something to remind you to check your thoughts. And then you just basically go through the process of changing that with self-talk. And a good thing to do is come up with some kind of a mantra, day by day in every way, I'm getting better and better, or I got this, or I can do that, whatever that mantra for you is, whatever works. And just go through that, check your thoughts. Where are they? And then just run through the self-talk in your head. Another thing Matthew and I have talked about on here is the spoken word. So one of the things I've heard some people talk about is speaking the words out loud, and just instead of running through them in your mind is actually saying them out loud. And I think that's another powerful exercise too.
Interesting. Okay. So once you develop, I'm assuming it's kind of like a muscle, you develop that muscle of being aware of your own thoughts. Is it something that you find in your own life, you get a baseline and it's good, or you have to keep coming back to it because you forget to be aware of your own thoughts? Like how has that been for you personally?
Yeah, I think it's a conscious effort. I do think there's some training and it gets better, but it's a conscious effort. Tony Robbins, I heard him say one time, if you know who he is, all the stuff he teaches people, he says, I get up and do that first thing every morning. Because if I don't, I'm going to be like everybody else. So, there is some conscious effort there and you have to be aware of it, and you can slip back and fall in the hole. We still fall in the hole, even though we are training. But hopefully we're more aware of it than we used to be, and we don't fall in as often, but it's an intentional practice. It really is.
I love it. All right. We got about 5 minutes. Anything that's either on your mind, on your heart that you just want to share this morning, things and techniques? I mean, there's so much to cover. I know I'm kind of jumping around. I just want to give people a little sampling so they can kind of get a taste of who you are and what you teach. And anything else anything else we should dive into?
Yeah, I would say if you don't have if some kind of active practice to train your mind, I would encourage you to implement one, whatever it is, whether it's you look into Unbeatable Mind. And Jesse, you said it, there's like a lot of stuff out there that kind of, runs together and mixes. But one of Commander Divine's quotes is, if you're not training, the world is training you. And so I think everything starts with the mind. So I would, if you're not doing something, whether it's just a quick meditation practice or some way to monitor what's going on between the ears, then implement that, because everything starts in the mind.
Oh, I love that. All right. So if we want to give someone a challenge for the next and give them a duration, how long and what do you think would be something good for them? If someone's like, I want some ideas, what do I take on first? What would you say?
I would say if you don't have, I keep going back to breathing, I really do. But if you don't have a breathing practice, then for the next 30 days, start one, whether it's 5 minutes of box breathing or just a couple of breaths here and there, but really be aware of taking really proper tactical breaths and working on that. That's what I would encourage people to do. That's made the biggest impact in my life.
I love it. And if they're going to take that on, how do they, start? I mean, let's say someone, maybe they're consistent in some areas of their life, maybe they're not, but how does someone start to develop that consistency if this is a new challenge? Like, okay, I get it. I'm going to take on my breathing practice, however long it is each day for the next 30 days. How does someone work on other than just do it? Or is that the secret? How do you work on the consistency of that?
Yeah, I would say that's probably it. Just do it. But one of the things I like to encourage people to do is set a time, set a time that you're going to do it, and maybe even a place. So I have a bench, one of those meditation benches at the foot of my bed over on the side that I don't sleep on. And that's my little meditation space. So I would say designate a place to do it, designate a time to do it, and then just implement some discipline after that, Jesse, and get after it.
Have you read the book Good Habits, Bad Habits by Wendy Wood?
I haven't read that one. I'll have to pick that one up.
Check it out. So I read most of it, then I set it down, and I just found it again recently. You ever do that where you have books you kind of half reading, you stick it someplace, you go, oh, I forgot. So I started reading through it again. It's a really great book on the psychology, physiology too, but the psychology behind how habits are formed and created. And so what you just said, where you said you have a meditation bench, there's something called a context and a construct in terms of habit formation, that you are doing things that your brain physiologically and psychologically to reinforce that consistency by having a specific time, specific place, that when you see that bench at the certain time, it's going to trigger that you almost start to do your breathing work probably before you even are consciously aware that you're sitting down to do it. Is that what happens for you?
Yeah, pretty much. Absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing, do you know the concept of habit stacking?
Let's hear it.
Okay. So habit stacking is where you take, there's a few different terms for it. That's what she calls it, where you take something you do already consistently and stack the new thing you want to do on the end of it. So let's say you brush your teeth consistently every day. Okay. If as soon as you finish brushing your teeth, you sit down to do your breath work, you're going to do the breath work a lot more consistently because it's stacked on top of something you already do. That's already a pretty ingrained habit. Make sense?
That makes perfect sense. That makes really good sense.
So I love this. All right. I just want to say thank you, Craig. You've dropped a couple of interesting one-liners, mantras, things. Do you have any other favorite things that you repeat to yourself often before I wrap up? I want to see that I know you have some good ones that float around.
Yeah, I do say I got this easy day. That's a SEAL thing apparently that I learned from Mark. But there's one good one. Have you ever seen The Edge with Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin? That's a really good movie. And there's a part in the movie where they're being stalked by this bear. They're in the Alaskan wilderness and they're stranded and they have to kill this bear. And so Anthony Hopkins is trying to pump Alec Baldwin up and he says, what one man can do, another can do. And so that's one of my favorite mantras, man. What one man can do, another can do. So if you've done it, why can't I do it? Right.
I love it. I love that one. And what was the other one? What was Easy Day? I haven't heard that one actually.
Yeah. Easy Day. That's one that I learned from Mark and his team, so easy day, man. We got this.
I love it. I don't know. There's certain ones that I hope you guys listening, there's different ones that resonate with everybody. When I hear that one, it just shifts. I'm like, yeah, easy day. All right. I love that.
Yeah, that's another good point, though. Find something that works for you, something that gets you going, fired up, and use that.
Yeah. Easy day, man. Easy day.
Easy day.
Craig, thanks for being here. This is great. I love this, guys. If you want to find more from Craig, where can they find you? Where can they connect with you? What's the best way for people to connect?
I've got a website, Jesse. It's under construction, though. It's wininyourmind.com. But I'm J. Craig Graves on every social platform.
J like Jesse?
Yeah. Johnny, yeah, like Jesse, Jonathan, but yeah, same thing.
J. Craig Graves, I love it. And what's the website that you have that's in the process of being built called?
Wininyourmind.com. Win in your mind.
I love it. Craig, thanks for being here. This is awesome, man.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Bye, guys. Easy day to all you guys. Easy day, man. If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.